Did you know that pumpkins are good for more than making jack-o'-lanterns? That's right. People actually eat them, and eat them a lot, surprisingly. And yes, you can make more than just pumpkin pie. For instance, today, we're gonna take one of these three guys. We'll figure this out in a minute. It's like a lottery here. We're gonna take one of these three guys, we're gonna stuff it full of pork belly, we're gonna put some onions, some garlic, and some salt and pepper, and a little bit of nutmeg in it, and we are going to make one of the most delicious things you can make with a pumpkin. Bacon inside. Well, at least pork belly inside. I mean, it's not quite bacon yet, it hasn't been cured, but oh, this is going to be so good. Now first, let's figure out which one of these guys is going to the chopping block. We have selected the sacrificial pumpkin for today's festivities. That's right. Now, in this case, you don't want to get like a really, really huge pumpkin because A, when they get really huge, they don't have a lot of flavor. And B, my God, man, how much freaking pork do you want to put in one of these? Let's start by cutting off the top. Now, you guys know how like the kids have the little Halloween cutters, you can do your jack-o'-lanterns. Well, between the pumpkin scraper and the little cutter, you could do this if you wanted to get the kids involved. But for now, for cutting off the top, I'm gonna hit it with just a regular knife. And this is where you don't wanna get the biggest knife in your kitchen because you don't wanna go through the whole thing, and you have a lot more control with a smaller knife. I mean, the flesh is only, 1.5 inches thick at the most. So we're gonna come into the top and we're actually gonna cut it at about a 45. You don't wanna cut it straight down because then the lid, when we put it back on, will just fall into it. And if you go too flat, it'll actually curl the edges as you cook. So now, well, let's see if we can open up a pumpkin. Maybe we'll find something interesting inside. And ta-da! Pumpkin seeds! What a surprise. We actually have a whole lot of mess in here. This is what we're starting with. So now, let's go ahead. Got my little scrap bowl here. I'm gonna take my scraper, or you could use a spoon or what have you. And basically time to delouse this guy. And this is the hardest part about the whole thing, is trying to dig all this stuff out. So give me a few minutes and let me get us a clean pumpkin ready. All right, that should be good enough. Now again, we're not trying to make this like picture perfect where there's not a bit left in there. As long as you get out just about most of it, just about most of it, that's the goal. So pumpkin is prepped. So now let's get back out our pork belly and let's cut some pieces so we can go ahead and size the inside of this. Oh yeah, and don't forget, you can roast all these seeds and eat them for a snack as well. So don't waste the pumpkin. I mean, it's more than Halloween. It is edible. So meat time. All right, and here we have our uncured belly. Look at that right there. They do have the skin took off of it, so that's kind of important. We're not trying to make cracklings right now. We're just trying to get just this good pork belly taste. Ooh. Now I'm gonna go ahead, and like I say, I don't know how much is gonna fit in here, so we're gonna do a trial and error, shall we say. I'm gonna cut this into probably 1.5 inch, 2 inch pieces, and then half that again. So that way you wind up with some good sized pork bites. And basically, we're just gonna see how many it takes to fill this guy up. All right, now that we have a full pumpkin, let's take it all back out so that we can actually flavor it up and get it right. And there you have it. Now we know how much pork will actually fit inside of this pumpkin. So what's next? Well, we add the flavor to the pumpkin. For that, a little bit of ground up pepper. Like I say, you gotta go crazy here, but you gotta add something to it. A little bit of salt. Now move it around a little bit so you make sure you get all the salt in all the corners. All right, we're gonna lay down our layer of onions down here. That way we get that nice sweet taste the onions give. I know it still seems kind of odd that onions give you a sweet flavor, but they do. All right, now we'll take our garlic and slice it up, mince it up, cut it up, whatever you want to call it. We're going to turn it into smaller pieces than what it is right here. We'll just drop in the garlic. Now, of course, we'll stir it around the sides too to make sure we get a little coating everywhere in there. And for those of you who have to have your pumpkin spice, well, let's go ahead and splash in just a little nutmeg in here just to kind of give it a little bit something else, because it is pumpkin. I know it sounds kind of odd with the pork, but trust me, solid flavoring. So now this has been spiced. That's why we re-spiced the pumpkin. Now let's load the meat back in it. But before we do that, a little salt and pepper on all of that too. Don't want it to feel left out. Now make sure you take your pork and drag it around the board so that way, well, any of the stuff that didn't happen to land on it as you were doing it, it picks it up and you don't waste no spices. And here you have one loaded pumpkin. Think it's full? Oh no, there's room for more. That's right. I'm gonna put a little bit of apple juice in my favorite glass. That's right, this thing is from back in the day. It's a 7-Up Uncola glass. I don't know if you Gen Xers remember this, but this guy I've been hanging on to for years. My favorite one. So let's pour a little apple juice in here till we fill it up. There we go. Boy, I didn't leave much room for liquid, did I? Good. All right. So now that this guy is fully locked and loaded, we're gonna set it in a casserole dish and we are gonna shove it in the hot box. Now, with it being in the hot box, you're gonna put it at 350, and it's probably gonna take about 4 hours for this, because this is pretty large. Once you put it back together, it's a pretty large piece of meat. So your temp probe is actually your best bet on this. I cut a small notch in the lid. Yeah, I know that sounds kind of fancy, but I cut a small notch in the lid, and we're gonna go into the heart of this guy. And we are looking for at least 160. That's the minimum to make it safe to eat. So while this guy's baking in the oven, Benson apparently has a story about pumpkins he'd like to tell you. So let's hear it from Benson. So let's talk a little bit about the pumpkin today, shall we? Did you know that a pumpkin is actually in the squash family? And that, believe it or not, 90% of this guy is just water. Whoa, that's a whole lot of stuff in there. And that each pumpkin has over 500 seeds in it? Usually. I didn't count them. That's just the story. Now, there was a world record set this year. That's right. One guy grew a pumpkin that weighed 2,749 pounds. I've seen cars that weigh less than that. Oh, that thing was huge. But I tell you what, it's gonna make some good pumpkin pie. I think I'm gonna go find a piece of it. See you guys later. And boom, out of the casserole dish, onto the display. Yeah, I know, a little greenery made it look real nice. Also, where the fat dripped out of it, dripped through the bottom of it, I pulled that up and put it on the top. That way you got a nice little glossy shine. So, I mean, your presentation is always on point. And of course, then you do the big reveal. Boom! That's right, meter. So what do you say we pull a piece of this out and see what we got? We got definitely jiggly. Look at there, tender as can be. Now I'm curious to see how much of the pumpkin actually transfers into the meat. Let's see, I'm gonna go ahead and slice me a piece off of the pumpkin shell itself, which by the way is really soft. This thing got tender. So I don't know if you're a fan of baked squash or baked pumpkin, but we're gonna give it a try and see what we got. So what do you say we dig in? Step one, we bite. Not too shabby. Doesn't have a whole lot of pumpkin flavor to it, which is kind of surprising since you cooked it in a pumpkin, but it's not bad. Now, let's see how our pumpkin tastes. Now, the pumpkin is good. It's, you know, if you like squash, but if you like ham or bacon flavored squash, well, this is your thing right here. That's actually really good. So I know that not only do you get cool points for plopping this on the table at Thanksgiving and going, hey, look at here, this is what we're having. And again, you don't have to use the pork belly in here. You could stuff this with chicken. You could stuff this with like vegetables if you wanted to do like a a vegetable stew or whatever, I mean, serve it right out of the bowl you're gonna eat, right? Man, this would be the way to go. I do know that this is gonna disappear, and I do know that Bigfoot is real. Y'all take care. I'm chowing down. Did you know that pumpkins are good for more than just making jack-o'-lanterns? Blah, blah, blah. Start off wrong.